What happens when a young, promising star falls head over heels for an older man, thinks she's found true love, and then realizes years later that she sacrificed her career, her self-respect, and her mental stability for his love? Linda Evans has been more forthcoming than ever before with her marriage to John Derek, an actor and director, when she became 82 years old. And what she says is different from the idyllic story that everyone thought it would be. A relationship based on dominance, deceit, and terrible betrayal lay beneath the Hollywood glitz and red carpets. Now that she thinks about it, Evans acknowledges that she gave up chances, friendships, and even her identity to make him happy. However, everything changed for her when another lady entered the picture. The impact was so profound that it created scars that she carried with her for decades. John Derek was sent to Linda Evans by fate while she was still establishing her career in Hollywood. With a promising career on the rise, she exuded optimism and youth. The entertainment business was captivated by Derek's good looks and personality, and he was already famous for his acting. He was more seasoned and older, but he had an air of self-assurance that could make anyone fall head over heels. Evans, who yearned for a committed relationship, saw Derek as the embodiment of the stability and allure she had been seeking. There was a lot of energy in their first meetings. Derek had a special knack for making her feel utterly alone. Despite the prevalence of transient relationships in Hollywood, Evans took this to be unique. Her unfazed by the age difference. Actually, she considered it an asset. His life story was instructive, and she saw stability in his adulthood. On the other hand, friends noticed red flags. Rumors spread about Derek's propensity to move on swiftly after the novelty wore off, and his reputation with women was far from pristine. Evans disregarded the uncertainties, brimming with hope. Their connection was special and meant to endure, and she put her faith in her emotions. Derek was just the beginning of her love for him and what she thought they could create together. She imagined herself as his lifelong creative collaborator, rooting for his every artistic endeavor and encouraging him to pursue his loftiest goals. She imagined a future when she and her husband might work together to create something bigger than themselves, a goal that seemed attainable. Linda was captivated by Derek's potential, according to those close to her, even more so than by the man himself. She had faith in his potential, but it clouded her perception of the underlying issues. Evans, like countless others before her, fell for the Hollywood fantasy that glitz and glitter can hide imperfections. A hopeful love tale would quickly turn into a challenging one involving sacrifice, treachery, and control. In due time, Derek's formerly irresistible traits would show themselves to be deadly traps. In those early moments, though, Linda Evans saw nothing but the possibility of love, and she was prepared to sacrifice all for it to succeed. John Derek's infamous reputation had been steadily growing since long before Linda Evans came into his life. He co-starred with Hollywood greats like Joan Crawford and Humphrey Bogart, thanks to his stunning, beautiful looks. It wasn't just his TV persona, though. His relationships were the main attraction. Every love affair Derek had was accompanied by rumors about his private life, which frequently cast a cloud over his professional life. In the 1940s, he wed actress Patty Bayers for the first time. They started a family, and seemed to be your average Hollywood family for a while. But Derek's daydreaming quickly took him somewhere else. Ursula Andress, a Swiss actress who became famous as the first Bond girl in Dr. No., and he were romantically involved in the 1950s. He wed Ursula in 1957 after his first marriage was wrecked by an affair. While the couple's passion was intense at first, their marriage began to crumble in the mid-1960s. Once again, rumors circulated that Derek was quick to move on when he became interested in something else. Those on the inside said he was charismatic but untrustworthy. According to his friends, he flourished when admired but faltered when it came to commitment. Women spoke behind closed doors about his domineering nature and his desire to influence their lives as much as his own. It stood in sharp contrast to the charming persona he displayed in public. Linda Evans was well informed about his history, including rumors, marriages, and divorces, when she entered his world. Still, she thought she might be an exception, as do many people in love. The strength, depth, and uniqueness of their link were beyond anything he had ever experienced, according to her. In retrospect, she acknowledged that she had hoped her commitment would appease the nagging feeling that kept drawing him away. One of the main points of contention in her marriage was that notion. Despite the red flags raised by Derek's past, Evans ignored them in favor of the man who had made her feel special and loved. Persuaded that her story would have a different ending, she chose to disregard the evidence of shattered relationships. Nevertheless, the past seems to repeat itself. John Derek had not yet completed his patterns, and Linda Evans was on the verge of learning how catastrophic they could turn out to be. For a fleeting second after her 1968 marriage to John Derek, Linda Evans appeared to have finally found the security she craved. From the outside looking in, they appeared to be a stunning pair. She was getting hot and beautiful. He exuded confidence and experience. What seemed like a Hollywood fantasy turned out to be far more complicated than that. Evans had no idea how their relationship would change once the cameras stopped rolling and the vows were exchanged. Derek has always insisted on taking center stage in their marriage. He forbade Evans from taking on parts that could put her in a class of her own and help her break out of his shadow. Co-workers and friends of Linda's noted that the once ambitious and determined star started passing up chances that may have catapulted her to stardom, since before she became famous for her Dynasty. In contrast, persisted in pursuing his own initiatives, particularly his ambitions to become a filmmaker. In retrospect, Evans acknowledged that she passed up numerous chances to make him happy. Initially, the control was understated. Derek was more persuasive than demanding. Certain parts would not be suitable for her, he would inform her, or that he would handle everything, so she didn't have to put in as much effort. Evans eventually found herself abandoning the career she had laboriously established because these suggestions had become demands. She gave up her independence in the name of her husband's ambitions, which she thought was a necessary sacrifice for love. In private, Derek's charisma could easily transform into icy seriousness if he was wronged. Evans remembered periods of seclusion, when she was treated more like a prop in his narrative than an equal spouse. She gave him too much control, which caused her to lose more of herself than she had anticipated. He was a controlling man. Once a self-confident young actress, she was transformed into someone whose value was contingent upon her husband's approval. The pair continued to appear enviable to others on the outside. Their demeanor was always refined when they went to events together, posed for pictures, and seemed absolutely stunning. However, fissures were already beginning to emerge beneath the surface. In exchange for his favor, Evans was stifling her own voice. Many women of her generation would relate to this dynamic, as they too believed that love required sacrifice, even if it meant suffering a terrible personal cost. In hindsight, Linda Evans acknowledges that her formative years were among the most formative. She felt the realization that she had sacrificed too much lingered with her long after the marriage had ended. But she couldn't perceive it yet. Her only certainty was that she was head over heels for her lover, and she would stop at nothing to keep him. She had no idea that her selflessness would not be enough to salvage the marriage. In reality, they paved the way for a treachery that would alter the course of her life irrevocably. Linda Evans was gravely mistaken if she believed that John Derek would be loyal to her because of her sacrifices. They were joined in life and love by a teenage girl called Mary Kathleen Collins in the middle of the 1970s. Truly, she was breathtaking, enthusiastic and naive about making it big in the movie business. Bo Derek, a name that would come to be associated with fame and beauty, was the product of her transformation under John Derek's tutelage. However, Linda Evans's appearance signaled the commencement of the demise. Bo represented everything that John Derek had always admired in a potential new inspiration: innocence, charm, and the opportunity to shape another person into his ideal. After giving her husband everything, Evans saw him become even more enamored with the new person in their circle. Derek and Bo's romance began subtly, with rumors and whispers, but eventually became unavoidable. The treachery and the events leading up to it were what really drove home how terrible the situation was. Surprisingly, Bo was only a teenager when she initially became involved with Derek. Linda Evans's husband was cheating on her while she struggled to keep the marriage together. Following an obscene and risky desire, whispers spread across Hollywood, and Evans, who had been feted for her elegance and attractiveness, was now shamed in front of the world. It was even more devastating for Linda to realize that her job, freedom, and sense of self, all that she had given up, had been in vain. Watching Derek destroy her marriage with a treachery that broke all boundaries was a devastating experience for her. It went beyond adultery. It was a total rejection of their marriage vows. The scandal was front and center in 1976 when John Derek eventually divorced Evans and married Beau. Tabloids plastered pictures of Derek with his considerably younger wife, and Linda's misery became Hollywood lore. Her friends noted how she attempted to maintain her dignity despite everything that was happening to her. But on the inside, the agony was too much to bear. Those were the worst years of her life, according to Evans. Someone else, someone much younger, ended up with her heart after she had given her all. This kind of shame would have shattered many individuals. Still, Linda Evans pushed through it all while she tried to put herself back together after her marriage fell apart. Even though her private life was a complete disaster, she would prove in the following chapter that she had not been beaten. Actually, she achieved her highest professional achievement despite her suffering. The breakup of Linda Evans' marriage to John Derek turned into a media circus rather than a private tragedy. Evans became ensnared in a media whirlwind as the collapse of a famous couple became entertainment in Hollywood. Everything that the tabloids wanted was in this story: new age, treachery, and controversy. Reporters couldn't help but make headlines out of Linda's tragedy when John Derek abruptly left his beautiful actress wife for a teenager. Evans endured unrelenting shame. According to the media, she was portrayed as a star who was left behind by a younger man. Tourists who were looking for an emotional breakdown followed her around like a shadow. Remarkably composed, she maintained her composure as rumors circulated, according to her friends. She was devastated behind closed doors, though. Years down the road, she finally spoke about how the betrayal had devastated her sense of identity and how she felt completely crushed. The reaction from Hollywood only served to heighten the agony. Realizing how unjustly she had been treated, several friends and co-workers offered their support. On the other hand, some people laughed it off as a party anecdote. For Evans, the brutality of an image-driven industry was more apparent than ever. In addition to losing her husband, she had to watch while others treated the topic as though it were fun. Despite everything, Linda Evans remained resilient. Rather than vanishing, she redirected her attention within, hell-bent on starting over. Evans discreetly started putting herself back together while John and Beau Derek flaunted their romance in front of the public. Her focus was squarely on getting well and reclaiming the power she had long buried. After putting her profession on hold during her marriage, she was now free to pursue it. New doors opened for Linda, and she remembered that she still possessed the charismatic personality, and star power to rule the silver screen. Instead of putting a damper on her career, the treachery that might have ended it was the catalyst that set her free. The tide had turned. Resilience was born from adversity, and success was a byproduct of that resilience. In the years that followed, Linda Evans would not only get well, but also land a part that would cement her position in television history and define her legacy. When the 1970s came to a close, Linda Evans had already suffered her greatest loss. She had to begin her life anew after being dumped, humiliated, and betrayed. On the other hand, opportunity can sometimes arise from disaster. The chance that would alter Evans' life for the better came to her in the shape of a television role. Her role as Krystle Carrington on Dynasty, a primetime serial opera, began in 1981. The timing was absolutely ideal. Evans has emerged into the limelight on her own terms after spending years in John Derek's shadow. One of television's most beloved characters was Krystle Carrington, the beautiful and kind wife of oil magnate Blake Carrington. Fans of the Carrington family's opulence and scandals tuned in week after week, but they also watched to witness Evans's fragility, courage, and grace on TV. The fact that the role reflected her own path was what gave Evans such a strong performance. She brought a world of glitz and grandeur to the screen as a lady dealing with betrayal, heartache, and power struggles. In real life, she had not yet fully recovered from the wounds inflicted by her marriage. Even though her admirers could see the gracefulness, the woman was actually very familiar with suffering. Krystle Carrington was more than simply a beautiful face because of the depth her performance received from her honesty. People could relate to her. Linda Evans soared to fame alongside the Dynasty boom. She was honored with a Golden Globe, with an abundance of awards that cemented her status as one of the most famous faces of 1980s television. Even more crucially, the position granted her autonomy. It gave her financial stability. In her heart, it bolstered her self-assurance. She finally demonstrated to everyone who had told her she wasn't adequate that she could succeed without John Derek. She had no problem seeing the irony. Linda Evans was reaching her pinnacle of achievement as John Derek explored projects with Beau, who was sometimes deemed superficial or self-serving. Even though he had previously told her not to pursue possibilities, he was now witnessing her success in ways he had never anticipated. As an actor and a survivor of betrayal, she found strength in Dynasty, which was a triumph in many respects. The memories of her marriage continued to haunt her, even though she wowed millions of spectators weekly. Even with all the glitter of the Carrington estate, John Derek's wounds remained deep, but for the first time in years, Evans felt in charge of her own fate. Now that she was in charge, she felt she could tell her tale no longer as the deserted wife, but as a strong survivor who had triumphed over tragedy. With the passing of time and the fading of the dynasty into television history, Linda Evans found herself in a space of profound introspection. She started to be more open and honest about her history, especially her marriage to John Derek, while she was away from the limelight and magazine covers. Her outlook had changed from grief to wisdom by the time she was in her twilight years. She transformed her voice from that of a Hollywood scandal's deserted wife to that of a woman who had endured, grown, and triumphed. Evans discussed her sacrifices for love in interviews. She was honest about the reason she had left her job. She wasn't ambitious, due to her belief that she had an obligation to back her husband's aspirations. She later realized that was a huge error in judgment on her part. Her once simple statement, "I gave up too much," carried the burden of decades of remorse. For innumerable women, those were the words that rang true after making similar sacrifices in relationships that failed to recognize their importance. She was equally forthcoming regarding John Derek, painting a picture of a charismatic yet toxic individual. While she could not deny his talent or charisma, she did not sugarcoat the fact that he had been overly domineering. Simultaneously, she would not portray herself solely in a victim-blaming light. Rather, Evans owns up to her part in making the dynamic possible. She freely said that her unwavering devotion caused her to miss warning signs and allowed the marriage to continue despite them. Because of her candor, her reflections were more impactful. The absence of animosity in her remarks surprised a lot of people. Even though he was publicly shamed and betrayed, Evans decided not to let his resentment fester. Rather, she focused on how she had grown, how she had persevered, and what she had learned. She went on to say that her suffering had a transformative effect on her, making her more resilient, self-aware, and empathetic than before. She has kept talking freely about self-worth and the perils of falling in love right up until she was in her 80s. Despite its inherent virtue, she urges her listeners to remember that self-sacrifice is never acceptable. Her narrative has evolved from a scandal to a survival story because she was brave enough to reveal her own weaknesses. Linda Evans provided something much more worthwhile than rumor or controversy through her subsequent contemplations. She showed that even the darkest parts of life can bring light, strength, and healing by letting others see behind the Hollywood mask. Despite the tragedy of her marriage to John Derek and the glitz of her family's empire, Linda Evans leaves behind a legacy that transcends both. Not only does her narrative revolve around betrayal, but it also delves into perseverance, loss, and the rediscovery of her own power. She has become an inspiration at 82 years old, a role model for honesty, resilience, and speaking the truth regardless of the consequences. The huge gap between public perception and reality is, for many, the most eye-opening aspect of her journey. She was the stunning blonde who appeared to possess all the desirable qualities, beauty, celebrity, and success, in the eyes of her devotees. The truth is that she was almost broken by the deception, sacrifice, and shame she went through. Rebuilding was her alternative, turning her suffering into an impetus to achieve new heights. She has made her narrative about her marriage into more than just a Hollywood controversy by finally coming clean about it. This story serves as a warning. She cautions us against losing control in the pursuit of love, dismissing warning signs because we are blind to the potential in another person, and remaining silent when we ought to be speaking out for our own value. The teachings here have relevance well beyond the entertainment industry, reaching out to all those who have ever experienced the crushing pain of unrequited love. Despite this, tragedy does not define her existence. Evans has made it plain that she refuses to harbor resentment. The independence she gained, the achievement she earned in her own way, and the knowledge she gained are what she really celebrates. Rather than being moved by her hardships, her story is an inspiration by the way she overcame them. Now, instead of being vicious, she is forthright when she discusses John Derek. The harm and the growth that resulted from it are both acknowledged by her. She has found solace in the fact that she is now known only as the strong, independent woman who triumphed against adversity, rather than as the betrayed woman. Her greatest triumph is that metamorphosis. Linda Evans's life ultimately serves as a reminder that fame and beauty cannot protect anyone from suffering a heartache. What really counts are the subsequent actions, the will to get back up, the bravery to speak up, and the knowledge to keep one's composure when falling in love. One of the most moving reminders that surviving is often the greatest victory is her story, which is unvarnished and unrehearsed. Do yourself a favor and subscribe to the channel if you were moved by Linda Evans's story and want to hear more hidden Hollywood tales like this one. If you think her strength is admirable, please like and share this video with anybody you think could benefit from hearing her story. Watch this space, because what we have in store for you next might shock you even more.